The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good afternoon. It is now 1 o'clock, and we would like to welcome you to today's Hospital Inspector Certification Exam Preparation webinar. My name is Caesar, and I will be your host for today. So today is February 23rd, 2021, and you're here for the Structural Plans Part 1, which is part of the Hospital Inspector Certification Exam Preparation webinar series. For your use, what we've done is we've uploaded today's presentation in a PDF format, and you can access those on the GoToWebinar handouts section of the panel there on the right-hand side of your screen. We've also uploaded a guide for working on projects under OSHPD's jurisdiction, which is also labeled Tips from the Experts. And in case you've missed the first set of presentations, you can always email us at oshpd.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov if you'd like to get a copy of those as well. So today we're here for about a 30-minute presentation, which will allow us to answer any kind of questions that you have regarding the presentation itself, or any other type of questions that are generic in nature, and we'd like to help you out with that. If you do have specific questions for a specific project-related issue, feel free to email us at that same email address, which is oshpd.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov, and we would be happy to have a conversation with you and maybe give you some pointers. So if we do experience transmission difficulties, please feel free to log off and log back in using the same login information that the GoToWebinar software sent you, and we will do the same on our end. If you were around, if you attended the previous webinar, this series is really an open mic format where we will pause throughout the presentation to answer questions that you may have, again, about this presentation. Please be sure to keep the questions in a generic format. So if you have a question, please click the hand icon next to your name, which raises your hand. We will unmute you and then unmute yourself to speak into the mic and ask your question. Again, we encourage conversation, we encourage discussion, so don't be shy. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'd like to help you out. So today for presenters, we have Mr. Chris Davis. He is a district structural engineer within the Inspection Services Unit. So Chris and Monica, if you're there, the presentation is all yours.
Thank you, Cesar, and good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to this part of structural portion for the plan reading webinar. So today is the structural part 1, and Thursday will be the part 2. Each week we'll have different disciplines. So last week we did the architectural, and like Cesar said, if you missed it and you would like to add information, just please send to us the email and we will be happy to help you. So each week we'll go through a specific discipline. This week is the structural, the part 1 Tuesday, part 2 on Thursday. Next week we will have mechanical and plumbing. The following week we'll have the electrical, and then we will end with the fire life safety. Next slide, please. The structural discipline has two part component of the exam. We have the code and we have the plans. Next slide. The code is divided in class A, we'll have 20 questions, class B, 12 questions, which are encourage and bracing, and class C will be 20 questions if it is applicable to that specific class C with encourage and bracing. Want to keep in mind that this structural part 1 and the part 2 is embracing everybody, class A and class B, in order to read the plans. So don't be afraid that if you are going to be for class B, you see some questions that are mostly for primary structural. The criteria is basically the same, is to guide you how to read the questions, how to make the right interpretation, how to go through the plans, and how to answer. Next slide, please. So the plans, the questions for the exam will have the class A will have 28 questions, and class B will have 6 questions, again, for encourage and bracing. Next slide, please. So before to go through the example for the plan reading, we want to share a few things. Why are we doing all of this? The reason, again, for this webinar is to guide you to go through the right process for the exam. You probably already know how to read plans, and this is good. Or maybe you're struggling, and this is why it's nice that you're part of this webinar. We are here to guide you. We are here to help you. Know how to read the plans is necessary not only to pass the exam, but also for future profession as IOR. You need to understand the construction versus the construction document. So let's analyze the questions with the correct responses, how to read and interpret the question, how to arrive to the response. Sometimes the approach is easy. Sometimes is not easy because the drawings are not clear, and this also happens during the actual construction process, and this is why there are RFIs. And Chris, we will go through the examples and go through the process and help you to understand the process, how to arrive to the answer. Next slide, please. What do approved construction document content? They have the original approved set, but they also have RFIs, they have no material alteration change, they have a material alteration change. The information can be anywhere in the drawings, but usually there is two main portion how to divide in your logic the information where to find. General information of the project may appear into the drawing title sheets, and some specific information will be containing the drawing details in some schedule. Next slide, please. This is an example of how table of content is. You can see here the different discipline, and this is of course in the overall with different categories that you can have in the plan of document. Sometimes you may have all, sometimes you may have less, depending on the scope of the work. Next slide, please. Each discipline contains general symbol, legend, abbreviation, general notes specific for that discipline. Has plans, elevation, sections, those also on different scale of drawings. There are details, there are scheduling, diagrams, structure, of course, so we'll have calculation standalone, any other information that is required for the specific discipline. And sometimes there are also 3D drawings. Next slide, please. In the example here, we are going to show you, you can see the different discipline. The main one is the cover page, the general notes, and the UL assembly. Sometimes the UL assembly are included in the specific discipline, and sometimes the UL assemblies are in general drawings. So be flexible to navigate through the set of drawings, because not always a specific information is where you're thinking. Next slide, please. Today we are going through the structural discipline. Therefore, we are going to show you what there are the disciplines that are relevant in order to answer to the plan reading questions for the structural portion. The structural relevant drawings are, of course, under the structural. Can be also under the architectural discipline, kitchen plan in this case, but also in seismic restraint that you will see on the next slide. Under the structural discipline, there are also framing plans, foundation plans, elevations, details. Next slide. And something that we would like also to remind you is what you need to look into the drawings. You need to look into notes, keywords, typical details, general notes, but most important, you need to look sometimes all the discipline, because to make a good project, all the discipline needs to talk to each other. This means that sometimes some information that you might think it is in the structural plan set of drawings is not. So you might look into the structural drawing, into the architectural drawings, into the mechanical drawings, electrical drawings, and so on. So be flexible. Next slide, please. And with that one, Chris, is all yours. And Chris, after every ending of the example, will give you the opportunity, with, like Cesar said, with the open mic, to raise your hand. If you have the question, we will listen to your questions and we will help you. Chris, all yours.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Okay, so I will start with example one, and so we'll go through each example. I'll offer some tips, just because these are tied to a specific set of drawings, but just give you guys some more generalized things to help out on, other projects. So first example, expansion tank ET-2 is anchored with what? So a few ways to approach this. First thing is trying to find an equipment seismic or anchorage chart. So I think here we show a screenshot in the corner showing that it's in the mechanical drawings. This could also be located in the structural drawings and can tie back to mechanical. So for this specific project, they have the equipment schedule and the anchorage details shown on this M4.01. But I think it's important to know that this could be on the structural. So always when you're looking for equipment anchorage, it could be on either the discipline or the structural, so a few different locations. So if we look at this seismic restraint chart, remember we're looking for the expansion tank ET-2. We go down, we find ET-2, and it says equipment location for the drawing, drawing sheet, and then a sheet with a star. So SR.M4. So I think, M4.01 would show it on plan, and M0.01 might have some general notes about the expansion tank. So we'd probably want to go check out SR.M4 next. So on the upper right, you can see that we have pulled up sheet SR.M4. And then if we zoom in into the middle, that is a detail for expansion tank ET-2. You can see the tag at the top. So if we look at this detail, there's a lot of information about the weight and the size, but we also see the anchorage. So it calls out 1/2-inch diameter red head, true bolt anchors with 4-inch embedment. So if we go back to our question, we'll see that answer B aligns with that. So are there any questions about how we got kind of through this example? So this one would apply to both, Class A and Class B, since this one is an anchorage one.
Again, we want to go ahead and encourage discussion. Raise your hand. We'll go ahead and unmute you and then unmute yourself. If there's no questions, that's okay. We're hoping that you're kind of soaking it all in. Don't be shy. If you were part of the last presentation, the discussion was good, and there was a lot of great questions. So I do see one hand up. I see your hand, Jake. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. So if you can unmute yourself, we'd like to hear from you.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I have a general question about the testing of the plans, if that's appropriate.
Please, go ahead.
Will this be on something like a smart program like Procore? Will this be like searching sheet by sheet? How will the testing be administered?
Monica, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, of course, no problem. So what we are going to do is not something like Procore. It's something that we think might happen in the future, but not for this exam. So every candidate will have a computer. On this computer will be Adobe PDF with the plans, with the questions, and there will be the opportunity to go through the plans. The plans will have the thumbnails with the drawing page identified. So it will not be just 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, but will be with the specific drawing number. So it will be easier to jump between the different sheets. And that is a way that will help you to navigate through the plans. Does this answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Great. Thank you, Jake. Marisol, we see your hand up. We'd like to go ahead and call on you, and we'll unmute you if you can unmute yourself. Marisol, if you can unmute yourself, I see that you're self-muted. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. I didn't have a question though.
Oh, okay. That's quite all right. We can go ahead and move on. We see that I see your hand up, but we'll go ahead and put the hand down, and I'll mute you. So thank you for that. Victor, I do see your hand up. I'd like to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, Victor.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Victor. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. I would like to find out if you will allow like practice session for the test before the actual test begins. Is there like a time frame for the candidate to practice some of the go around to find out exactly how to approach the questions and PDF files on the plans? And do I like a mock-up test before the actual test? Is there any possibility on that OSHPD provides, or they just don't have any luxury to go just straight to the test?
So I believe you're asking if there's a practice exam for this this test, and the short answer to your question is no. There's no practice exam that we offer, but we can share with you that in the previous presentations, we were asked by you guys to provide maybe some sample questions from the old exam and using the old plans, and that's something that we're working on to provide you prior to the test. Monica, I don't know if there's something more that you can add to that.
Yes. So what you are seeing here, these are the actual odd plans that we use until the last session exam. And the questions that you see here are the actual questions that we had, similar actually, that we had during the exam. We are going through the 5 questions now, and then you guys will have 2 homework as a mini practice that Chris will provide to you in the end of this webinar. This 2 homework is not an obligation, but you can send to us the answer. And on Thursday, we will go through on the part 2 of the webinar, we will go through the specific 2 homework. In addition of that, on Thursday, after the webinar, will be provided as a handout additional questions for practice. So it would be something like you are seeing here, where there is the question and there is will be provided also the answer. And sometimes it will be a way to guide you again how to arrive to the answer. Sometimes not so much in detail, sometimes yes, but it's this similar formatting that you will have as an handout on the part 2, so on Thursday, per each discipline. So that is a portion that you can use for your own practice.
And Victor, just to add to what Caesar and Monica just mentioned, I think as we get closer to the test date, we put on some presentations about how to, like some tips with using the software that you'll have on the computer during the test. So like how to navigate a PDF efficiently, just so you're more prepared. So that way you're not kind of throwing at the computer and, using software you're not familiar with or, a procedure. So just to kind of help out.
Yes, and also on what Chris just said, please register to the March 30th webinar, because it's where we will go through the process for the exams. So we'll go through about the PDF, how is the formatting, and so on. So please, if you didn't do yet, register to the March 30th for the IOR exam process.
Yes, thank you, Chris and Monica. That's a great point. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and visit our website at oshpd.ca.gov, and under the building safety and finance section, you'll find, if you go down to the forms, training, and resources section under webinars, scroll all the way down, and you'll see the inspection services unit, where you'll find the presentations that we have up and coming, where you can register. Like Monica and Chris said, March 30th is going to be the instruction of IOR exams, what to expect during the exam. That we feel that's going to be helpful for you. So we do have one more question. Victor, I don't know if that answers your question at all before we leave you.
No, that's good. Very good. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. I do see another hand up. I want to go ahead and call on Kamal. Kamal, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, that'd be great.
Hi. Actually, I have a question. When I had the exam last time, it's too hard to get the plan in one PDF, and the resolution is not good also. So there is any way you can have it as if I need to open just the architecture or structure or mechanical, so it has a separate PDF, or it's too hard to get it. It's for one PDF for all of them. So
the way that it's formatted now, as you mentioned, it's one PDF, and it encompasses all trades. The breaking down of the plans is not something that we've been asked to do before, but we can certainly entertain that. And if it's possible to do, we'd be happy to do that. Monica, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, so like I said, will be the breakdown per drawing, per sheets number. So it will be, for example, A1.1, S3.5. So of course, with the letter, they will identify your discipline, the discipline that you want to take a look at. That is easy to do. As for the quality also of the PDF, the new plans that we are going to use are a better, it will be easier to read better the plans this for the new exam that you will take. So it will be new plans, and it will be better to the eyes to look at new plans.
But it's not possible to separate each trade with one PDF. I have to get all of the trades with one PDF as codes. It's easier when I need code part 1, part 2, part 3. Just I open just this code. So if the question is
I see what you say. Sorry, I didn't understand that portion. As for we could not upload the entire set of plan in one shot because the file is way too big. So we are breaking down per discipline. So last week we uploaded the architectural portion, and of course if there are other discipline that are necessary in order to answer to the specific questions that we are providing. The webinar will be uploaded as well. So last week we uploaded architectural and structural. This week we uploaded a structural and the architectural again, and seismic restraint. Next week we will upload the mechanical and plumbing, and so on. So in the end of the webinar, so you will have basically the entire set.
Asking for,
yeah, so for the test, everything will be, right now there's no plans to break it up, but the set is bookmarked, so you can, scroll through the like table of contents or the bookmark list to, to find the other disciplines. But we'll look into it, but I think right now, instead of juggling, because breaking up those PDFs, it's just a lot more files to open and things like that, so I think it might end up creating more confusion.
Actually, I hope you can look at that, because I'm sure it will be a problem for everybody, not just me, because it's not easy to open 200 page one time, one PDF. So it's either but it's that's fine.
Yeah, we'll look into it and see if there's some options. Maybe we have the one that's all combined, and maybe we have the separate disciplines, so then the user can kind of choose how they want to approach it. But I recall, I think they were last time, but all the plans and stuff are fully searchable too for the upcoming exam.
Great. We have some more questions, so thank you, Akmal, for that question. We'd like to go ahead and call on Brian. Brian, if you're there, we see your hand up. If you'd like to unmute yourself, we've unmuted you. Brian?
Hello, thank you. I just had a question about, if I cannot make the March 30th class, is there a way I can view it after if my schedule does not allow me to be available that day?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Brian, for that. And Akli, we see that you have your hand up. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akli, and since I'm attending all these classes, and as you see in these drawings, since it's a train inspector, I understand it's for an exam, but also we need to train an inspector to be in the field. As you see on the answer, or on these drawings, they're showing half-inch diameter red head with a 4-inch embedment. But the code requires that we need to refer to an ICC ESR, which in this case should be 2251. Now, the inspector needs to know that all post-installed anchor must be require special inspection, and also the torque installation. You think that you can improve this drawing, showing that a correct call out for this anchor for this tank?
Yeah, so I mean, the call out's correct. I think, the intent of this webinar is to help people learn how to navigate the plans, right? The general notes of the structural drawings would contain, the applicable ICC report numbers for all the used anchors, and so the inspector knows what anchors are allowed for the job, also along with the testing requirements. So I wouldn't say anything is wrong with this detail. I think there's just more information that is not relevant to the answer, but is going to be shown in the general notes.
Yeah, and to add to what Chris said, that's definitely a good point. But also want to appreciate the comment from you, actually being able to point that out and being able to give that heads up. And that's exactly the kind of comments that we're looking for. Because as Chris mentioned at the beginning and Monica mentioned at the beginning, this is really a fundamental webinar. And if you have any kind of comments or examples or suggestions like you just provided, that's great, and it's something that we'd like to help the IOR to help and prepare to pass the exam the best way we can, and even to help prepare for in-field inspection as they go out in the field, and or you will go out in the field and inspect these, what can be pretty complicated construction projects. So we want to thank you for that comment. I'm looking through the list of names, and I don't see any more hands raised, Chris. So if you'd like to go ahead and continue, that'd be great.
Okay. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. So we'll move on to example 2 now. Okay. So example 2. So how many bolts are required to attach the beam at the second floor along grid line M to the column at grid line 23? So just from reading the question, we understand that talking about framing plans at the second floor. So first thing we'd probably want to do is pull up the framing plans from the structural drawing. So on the right, we have the second floor framing plan pulled up. And then if we look back at the question, it's at grid line M and grid line 23. So you can see that we've highlighted grid line M, and that's running left to right, and grid line 23 is running up and down. And then how many bolts to attach the beam? So we have a zoomed in section. I think the highlighted box is looking at one of the details there. And I think actually this should be over to the left a little bit. Sorry for the box being mislocated, but I think the answers are going to be the same because it's the same beam across the whole line. So we've zoomed in, and you see that we have a W21 by 44 shown in this area, and you can see that along the whole line. So the answer is still going to be the same. And there's also a detail called out, so 2, S 4.1. So we'll start with there. So we'll pull open detail 2 S 4.1 just to see if it has any applicable information. Looking through it, it doesn't really talk anything about the end connections of the beam. It's more how it's framing with the deck, so it's not applicable. And then let's see. So then we'll want to go to, since that detail's not showing anything in the plan, isn't providing any more connection details, we'd look at the typical details. So if you go through the typical details on S7/S5.8, you'll find the typical shear connection schedule. So if you recall, we had a W21. So going through this table, you find the W21, and the number of bolts required for the end connection would be 6. So the answer would be B. So I think takeaways from this question, looking at the plan will help you identify your beam. So, we were able to find the size. The other thing is I think it'll help us identify if it's a gravity or like a lateral, like a moment frame beam. Because sometimes, if you go to the plans, it'll call out this specific connection. So usually lateral framing won't be covered by a typical detail like this. You'll go to a specific detail. So since we looked at this beam, we looked at the plan, we looked at that detail 2 S 4.1. Didn't see any specific information for the connection. We knew it was okay to go to the shear connection schedule, which is this, typical steel framing detail. And so I think from that is example 2. So we'll open it up for questions.
Again, if you have any comments or if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. No question is a silly question. Again, if you're in doubt or need clarification about the drawings themselves or even questions about the exam, we're here to help. We're here to answer these questions. Now is your time. Take advantage of it. You have the entire inspection services unit team here ready and willing to help you out and answer questions, whatever the question may be. So I'm scrolling through the list of names and I don't see any hands raised so far. So I'll give it one more second or two to give you the opportunity to raise your hand. And I did see one hand pop up. Oh, I see another hand. I'm going to call on John first. John, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, John.
Yes. So my question is, when you have an intersection of beams and columns, if you're not clear of which beams you're talking about, is there a chance to ask the proctor during the exam?
I feel like the proctor probably is not going to answer any questions just to make sure that everyone has the same information. I think you're able to challenge a question. If there's something you think that's not clear or the answer's wrong, etc., you can write that out on your test. And so when your test is graded, we will look into that. So if the question isn't clear, like you're saying, it's you can't tell if it's a beam going left, right, or up and down on the plan. You can identify that, and then that would be taken into account. So maybe that question would be thrown out in the exam.
Yeah, because one side of the column may not have the same size beams and shear connections.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good point.
that's
so
all
I mean,
have.
I think from reading this question, if we go back and read it, so it says to attach the beam at the second floor along grid line M. So when I read it through like that, it to me it means the beam is on M, and then they're talking about the connection at grid line 23. So I think the wording here is clear in this example, but if it didn't say along grid line M, it just said, at the intersection of M and 23, then there's 4 connections you're potentially looking at. So, but yeah, I think that's a good question, and something I think, you have to read through some of these questions kind of very, very closely to make sure you understand the right spot you're looking for the information. And I guess just to add for other people that might not be as familiar with plans, we jumped to this shear connection schedule. A lot of times, if you look at the framing plans, they have notes down at the bottom, and they'll refer you to a lot of the typical connection details. This one, I'm not seeing it here, but on other plans. So it's always a good idea to read the notes. And sometimes they'll refer you back to the first floor plan, where they contain even additional notes, etc.
So, can you repeat? How do you challenge the question again?
I believe there's a spot on the exam to just write.
Yeah.
We will do this one on March 30th.
Yeah, it's a great question, John. So on the actual Scantron, there's a place for you to identify which question you're looking to challenge, and it's something that we can look into. And like Chris said, that's something that we'll take into account, and possibly if the question is unclear, or we determine that we are able to throw it out, that's something that we might do. So, John, I don't know if that answers your question or if that helps you at all.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Okay, very well. Thank you, John, for that. I'm looking for raised hands again. I'm looking to encourage you to raise your hand and have a discussion. So I'm looking through the list of names one more time, and I don't see any more hands raised, and I don't see any questions typed into the question box. So, Chris, I hand it over to you.
All right, thanks, Caesar. Okay, so we'll go along to example 3 now. So example 3, so what is the base plate size and thickness for the column at the intersection of grid lines P and 27? So this one, if you've already flipped through the plans and you're kind of familiar with the sheets, I think you can go straight to the column schedule sheet. So and that's what we've shown here. It's that sheet S5.1. So we're zooming in here. You can see that we're showing P-27. And so this is calling out the size of the columns. Typically on the plans, column sizes aren't shown. They're usually represented in a column schedule unless the building's maybe 1 story. So here we know that this is the column size. Typically base plate size is going to be dependent on the size of the column. And then let's see. So then we also, if you see in the upper right corner of that same sheet, there is the base plate schedule. So now that we know the column size, we can zoom in on the base plate schedule, and we know that we had a W10 by 33 from the last sheet. So we can see the base plate size is going to be 1 inch thick, and the length and width are going to be 18 inches. So we can see that would be answer A for example number 3. And then we'll open it up to questions, related to the example or just any general questions. This one was pretty straightforward, but.
Great. Thank you, Chris. George, I see that you have your hand up. I'd like to go ahead and call on you. George, I'm going to unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, that'd be great. George?
Yeah, I see right here. It shows on S5.1 in the same sheet. Look for the base plate schedule to find the answer for W10 by 23. Is that a typo there? Is that supposed to be by 33?
Yeah, that's a typo. So yeah, it should be 10 by 33. So you can see in
thank you.
We got the right one highlighted.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and that's a great example. If you see that on the exam and it just doesn't make sense to you, or something we call out something that is shouldn't be there, go ahead and challenge it. That's a great example. So George, thank you for that, and thank you for raising your hand. I'd like to go ahead and encourage others to raise your hand as well. I see we have about 98 people on the webinar, so want to go ahead and thank you for joining us, and go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to have a discussion or if you have a question. And we have a question in the text box. The question reads, is the webinar registered, or where can we find it? So I'd like to answer that without texting or in the chat box, and I'd like to point you out onto our website. If you're on a computer now, you can follow the instructions that I'm about to give. If you go to oshpod.ca.gov and then go on the top of the page in the blue ribbon is going to be Building Safety and Finance on the left-hand side. Click on that. And then right underneath that is going to be Forms, Training, and Resources. Look for the section that says Webinars. And when you click on that section that says Webinars, scroll down all the way to the bottom. You'll look for the Inspection Services Unit, and you'll find the webinars that we have up and coming with dates. And if you click on that date, it will allow you to register for that specific webinar. Again, we have, February 25th, March 9th, all the way down to March 30th, which is going to be instruction of IOR exams, which you can register for, and we'll see you there. So I hope that answers your question, Waleed. I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to raise your hand again, and I'm going to look through the list of names, and I don't see any more hands raised. So, Chris, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not for this example.
Okay, if you'd like to continue, that'd be great.
Okay, so let's go to example 4. Okay, so this one is the kitchen equipment is anchored to what type of concrete? So this question's very general. So I think the starting point would probably be to start looking through the kitchen layout drawings or the kitchen drawings to try to find an equipment schedule. So you see, if we go to the first food service drawing, you can see we have a schedule of equipment. And so looking through that, we can see there's a column for seismic details kind of in the middle, and they're on a variety of sheets. So since this question was quite generic, we probably can just pick one sheet. So I think for this example, we ended up choosing sheet SRA 6-10, which, let's see here, which show up on a few of these equipment items. So if we go to the next slide, we can see right now we're showing a handful of the equipment anchorage ones, and so we've highlighted some examples where they're being attached to the concrete. So you can look through those, and you'll be able to find the answer on any of these. So we've specifically looked at sheet SRA 7 and detail 9. So if you zoom in, you can see that the details all call out 3,000 PSI lightweight concrete. So that would be answer B. Sometimes the food service drawings might say concrete per structural, so then you might have to go back to the structural drawings, and then knowing where for this example, where the kitchen is, if it's on the slab on grade, you could look in that area to see what type of concrete's there. So you might not see it from the plans. Typically that's in the general notes. So you might have to go to the general notes of the structural drawings, where you could see that they specify for slab on grade, it's 3,000 PSI lightweight, or if it's an elevated slab. So a few different ways you could possibly get to this answer depending on how the plans are set up. And I guess this is a good example, is that, this is just one set of plans. Every design professional sets up their plans differently. So, when you first are on the job and get your plans, you really need to sit down and spend some time to go through things and get familiar with it, because, everyone lays things out differently. And with that, we'll open it up to more questions.
Great, thank you, Chris. Again, please raise your hand or click on that hand icon if you have a question, need a clarification, or just would simply like to make a comment based on what you've seen here, or maybe based on what you've seen out in the field or on a project that you've worked on, something that would stand out and that you think that would help further clarify what we're sharing with everyone here. If you'd like to share an experience, that'd be great as well. So I'm looking through the list of names, and I don't see any more hands raised. And again, we want to encourage discussion, want to encourage the interaction between you and the inspection services unit. We believe that this is helpful and beneficial to you. So please take advantage of the time that we have here to ask a question. I don't see any more hands raised, and I don't see any more questions in the question box. Chris, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think not for this example.
All right.
Okay, so I'll move on to example 5. Okay, so this one says hot water recirculation pumps HWRP-1 and HWRP-2 are and blank. So I'm going to skip to the question just so we can get a sense of what we're looking for. Mounted on housekeeping slabs, mounted on pedestals, suspended from the deck, or wall mounted. So that way we kind of have a better idea of what we're supposed to find. So the question is asking about hot water recirculation pumps. So first guess would be to, go to the plumbing drawings and try to find an equipment schedule. So that's what we've done in the example. I think that's how these plans were set up. So if you go to the plumbing drawing P3.01, you can see they have an equipment seismic restraint chart. And that's just showing equipment for this sheet. So you may be flipping through a few plumbing sheets till you find the correct plan location that would have these recirculation pumps. So we can see that we have HWRP-1 and HWRP-2 listed here. It shows the equipment location, and then it shows the sheet number for the seismic restraint. So that's SR.P1. So we'll flip to SR.P1, and then this shows that it's these drawings, so WF-19122-28. So we find WF-19122-28, and we'll see that both of these hot water recirculating pumps are referencing the same sheet and the same detail. And we see they're both supported, they're suspended from the deck above or the slab above. So that would put us at answer C. Now for this project, the plumbing sheets had the equipment schedule and listed the drawings. As I mentioned earlier on another example, the structural drawings could have a list of all of the seismically, braced or anchored plumbing items. And you could even find the detail in the structural drawings that wouldn't necessarily be in the plumbing drawings. So it really just depends how the design professional sets up their drawings. So just something to be aware of when you're looking through plans that, this same question on a different set of plans could have the answer in a completely different spot. And then sometimes, the plumbing drawings would have the equipment schedule, but then reference a structural sheet. And the structural drawings could also have in a schedule, referencing that same detail. So, depending on how things are set up, could be multiple ways to get to the same answer. And with that, we'll see if there's any questions related to this example. Any general questions?
Great, Chris. Thank you. We see that Brian, you have your hand up. We'd like to go ahead and call on you. So, Brian, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So the question I have is, the drawings and the examples that you have here today, the drawings are pretty well organized in the fact that, the kitchen equipment, drawings show the concrete PSI versus, like you said, having to go back to a structural set, or the plumbing drawings call out the structural details on them. Is the new set of plans that you guys are adopting, are they as well organized as this current set, or are they going to be a little bit more of a challenge, do you think?
I would say they're well organized in the sense that the information can be found. I don't recall exactly where everything is located, but there's a logical path that would be similar to what you would find on any project in the field. So I think the goal from this this training is just to show you that sometimes there's multiple paths. So you might have to look at a different sheet. So I think when you're taking the exam, maybe before you even start questions, look through the table of contents on the, I think it's one of the first sheets, typically one of the G sheets or the architectural sheets where they list all the sheets and you can kind of see, is there a structural equipment list, for anchorage, or is that going to be in the plumbing or the mechanical drawing? So, I think the goal of this is just to kind of give you an overview of how plans can be set up. And as being an IOR and every project being different, you need to have the tools to be able to adapt to, how the plans are set up by the design professional. So, I would just recommend always just going through that first sheet. Obviously there's a lot of sheets in the plan set. So at least reading through the sheet table of contents can help you kind of understand where things are located.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for raising your hand and having the discussion. We received a question in the chat box, and the question comes from Abdu. Abdu, if you're there, I'd like to go ahead and unmute you. If you'd like to unmute yourself, maybe you can ask your question and we can help clarify. Abdu, if you're there, unmute yourself.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Abdul. My first question was, when they talk about the computers that's going to be used in the exam. The question I had was, I heard Adobe going to be used. I was wondering if the computer is going to have a Bluebeam as well or no.
The computers that are provided are only going to be equipped with the PDF reader, and the PDF documents will be searchable, but it will not have a Bluebeam.
Okay. So before I go, maybe I think I had another one. Because I saw they talking about the plane flips. The last example was a perfect example. They show exactly the structural drawing and the plumbing showing the type of concrete used. So and I don't know if the exam just allows basically the time allocated for the exams allows a little bit of time for the plane flips or no?
Monica, if you're there, is that something that you'd be able to help with?
The plans will be, how can I say?
Let me ask you. I just said that because I'm hearing even during the example saying that different drawing, different plan, and the question come up, we can have some drawing that's going to be perfect like this one. So, and I know every sets of drawing are different, so it's likely if you just be able to give yourself a little bit of time to do a flip, that would be very helpful. I was just wondering if the exams, allows that time or not.
Yes, you will have plenty of time because actually what we did from the last session of exam, we reduced the number of the question with this and kept the same amount of time, which means basically that you will have plenty of time to go through the drawing. Definitely.
All right, thank you. That's all I got. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you for the question. That's a great question. We want to sincerely thank everyone for raising your hand and having the discussion. And I say that because with the question that you may have is something that may be something that the person next to you or the person that is shy doesn't want to ask. So thank you for raising your hand and asking. So I'm going to look through the list of names and look for raised hands one more time, and I don't see any more raised hands or questions in the text box. So Chris or Monica, would you like to share the following slides, please?
Yep. Okay, so I'm not going to go through these now, but if you download the slides, we have a couple homework problems just for you guys to practice out. And I think Caesar mentioned you can email the answers to us, and I think we'll go over these on Thursday. So, based on the answers we get, we can kind of see if people were having trouble with certain things or navigating certain parts of the plans. And I think, here's the email address. And I know the question kind of came up a few times, and we usually get this often, how do we download the handouts? So if you look at your, I think this is GoToWebinar control panel. There should be a spot that says handouts, and you can click a down arrow and it will kind of show you all the things, all the files. And then there'll be a bunch of files you can download. So there's the practice plans for the structural, practice plans for the architectural, practice plans for seismic restraints. Then there's this webinar in a PDF format that we just went through, and then a guide for working on projects under OSHPD jurisdiction. And with that, we'll open it up one last time for any last questions.
Thank you, Chris. I do see that, Michael, you have your hand up. We'd like to go ahead and unmute you if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, great. I was just curious. I just found out about the webinar series here. I was part of the first one. I think it was last summer. On this one, I've noticed that you can go back and see the first two. I've missed those. I was just curious if there was a way for me to still download the handouts from those and follow along with the recorded webinars.
Yeah, so if you'd like to obtain copies of those handouts, you can go ahead and email that email address that Chris showed on that slide, which is oshpod.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov, and we would be more than happy to send those to you. That way you can follow along on that presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Brian, I do see that you have your hand up. Brian, I'd like to go ahead and unmute you if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Good. Thank you for raising your hand.
Good, thanks. I actually just want to know if you could go back 2 slides and let me take a screen capture of the questions real quick so that I can answer them.
Are you able to see them?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Excellent.
Perfect. And just so you know, we will be sharing the results of what everyone submits as far as percentages to see who got the percentage right and where we need to further clarify on our end for presentation. So Brian, thank you for raising your hand. I'm going to go ahead and mute you. I'm going to call on Daniel. Daniel, I see you have your hand up. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. So if you can unmute yourself, that'd be great. Daniel?
I'm looking at the drawings and I can't seem to find any MEP drawings anywhere within these packages. Is there something that I'm overlooking? So in the practice plans.
So I think the practice ones, I mean, looking from these homework ones, these are kind of related to structural, and number 2 would be probably an architectural item. So there just might not be any MEP related questions.
Okay, so I won't have to worry about it for as far as the homework.
These homeworks. I'm not sure if some of the future ones will, I think because, we have these webinars on all the different disciplines. So maybe in the future.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just going to take the opportunity to share with you that after the structural, we'll be going over mechanical plumbing. And then after that, electrical, after that, fire, life, and safety. And then after that, the instruction of IOR exam. So if you're looking to get a little refresher on mechanical plumbing, electrical, fire, life, safety, then just make sure you register for those webinars on our website. Again, that's oshpod.ca.gov. And we're going to go over the other trades in the near future. So I want to go ahead and look up the names. I'm looking for raised hands. If you'd like to go ahead and have a discussion or need clarification on anything, we are almost to an hour, so that's great. That means that we gave a little bit of instruction and we've been able to answer your questions and at least entice you to raise your hand and ask a question or ask for clarification. So Louis, I see that you have your hand up. Louis, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, Louis.
Yeah, perfect. I had a quick question on the page that comes after the homework. You guys were saying the email so quickly. I just wanted to screenshot that for myself Perfect.
Yes, and again, while we do that, we want to go ahead and remind you that although we're asking you to email any questions about these webinars to the oshpd.fddisu@oshpa.ca.gov, we want to remind you that if you have any other question, inspection services unit related or IOR related, we want to go ahead and encourage you to use that email. If you have someone who's looking to become an IOR but doesn't really know how to go about it or needs clarification on the administrative code or anything that you can think of, please send them our way. We're more than happy to have a discussion with them, and you can share this email with them, share the screenshot, and send them our way, and we'd like to have that discussion. So again, looking through the list of names, I'm looking for hands that are raised or even questions in the text box. Go ahead and type your question in or raise your hand. I do have a question here that says, where can the plans for the answers for answer homework and number 2? Waleed, I believe that's your question, so I'd like to go ahead and unmute you. And Javier, I see that you have your hand raised, and Alexander as well. But let me call on Waleed so we can answer that question real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the list of names and get to Waleed here in just a little bit. So Waleed, I'm unmuted you. If you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, how are you? First of all, thank you for all guys for this great webinars. It's much benefit for us. So my question now, you give us the homework, but where we can find the plans so we can answer the questions.
Can you see the handout from the GoToWebinar tab? Though under this tab, under the handout, there are the plans that you can download.
I think it's not available now, so I tried to search it.
So under the Go-To toolbox, you should see a tab that says handouts, and it should be grayed out, and that should be have a drop-down menu. And under the drop-down menu, you should see the different plans, whether it's the practice plans, architectural, seismic restraint. Do you see that?
Yeah, in the first webinar, I saw it, but now I think it's appeared if I'm correct. If other guys, they are.
I see. What you can do is you can go ahead.
Share my monitor. Oh, it won't let me share the GoToWebinar control panel. So never mind.
No, because you will have as a presenter anyway.
Yeah. So Waleed, if I encourage you to send an email and provide a phone number, and maybe we can go over the phone with you on how to do that, or we can just simply reply to you and provide those for you. Hopefully, it's the file isn't too big where we can email it to you.
Okay, no problem. I will send you email.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
if everyone can see my screen, here's a screenshot of the GoToWebinar control panel. Probably looks a little different for you because you are not a presenter. But down here, let me draw an arrow. There's something that says handouts. So if you click this little down arrow, it'll expand and you'll see like 5 PDFs you can download.
Chris, is there any way you can make that a little bigger? I'm having a little spin my eyes to see that.
Let me see. Let me try one other thing.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's appeared here.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's not the easiest to make bigger.
Yeah,
and that's quite all right. I believe Waleed got that and was able to see those down there. So Waleed, thank you for your question.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And the other question that now, because I'm studying the ACI code, so is that will be benefit for us also for the structure part of this exam?
So again, we had a similar question earlier, and the other question was asking specifically about ICC exams.
Yeah,
and
it's me. It's me.
Yeah, the way that we responded to that was that even though our exams are not based off ICC, they're not based off ACI, they're not based off NFPA, they're not based off anything like that. But if that's something that you choose to study on your own accord, it may help you. We're not saying that it won't, but I can't definitely say that it will, based on what information that we're providing. And the types of questions that we're putting out there for the OSHPD specific IOR exams.
So we should study the OSHPD codes, I mean, for each part, for plumbing, for electrical, for structure, for architect.
Well, to help you, if you're looking for a list of items to study, if you go again to our website and you go to Building Safety and Finance, and then you scroll down to Hospital Inspection Services, and in the middle you'll see Hospital Inspector Certification Examination Information, and then click Learn More. Go all the way down to the bottom, and you'll pass the IOR exam application, and then at the bottom you'll see learn more about applying for the certification exam, and then you'll come to a tab that's labeled View Acceptable Reference Materials for Exams. So if you're looking for something to study off of, a list of acceptable references, there you'll see that we list the California Administrative Code, California Building Code, so on and so forth. We list reference standards such as ACI, ASCE, AWS, NFPA. So I believe this would be a good study guide for you if that's something you're looking for.
Hey, Caesar, could you explain how to get there? I pulled up the website and got a little...
Yeah, so Chris, I see your screen. So if you go to Building Safety and Finance and you click there, and then in the middle, in the white portion of it, so click out of the blue ribbon, the blue list of values. In the middle, you see Hospital Inspector Certification Examination Information. So click on Learn More. And you scroll down. You have to scroll all the way down to the bottom because you're going to go through, you see the hospital inspector exam application all the way down. Keep going. There. You see View Acceptable Reference Materials for Exams. So you click on that. And it'll open up a PDF. And this is going to be your list of acceptable reference materials. So the exam is based off of these codes, these references, and so on. So we want to make the distinction, though, that there are two parts, right? There's two parts to the exam. There's the plan reading, and there's the code portion of the exam. So this is going to help you with both portions of that.
Okay. So we should be familiar with these codes so we can pass the exam. I mean, this need to be practiced as much we can. So the other type of exams, such as ICC or ICI code, they have their practice exam. So we'll be familiar with the type of questions and the drawings, and that's our problem. Yeah, the other guys they highlighted.
Right, and that's the same concern that we heard during our earlier webinars, our first two webinars, if you will. So that we're looking to provide out these webinars for training to help better familiarize yourself with the exam and what types of questions they're going to be. And also we're looking into providing sample questions as well. As Monica had mentioned earlier, these webinars are part of our training package for those that are looking to take the exam. So if you know someone who is looking to take the exam but doesn't know about these webinars, please encourage them to attend, because we're hoping that you're finding this information valuable.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay.
And if you do the ICC kind of training, just remember, the ICC stuff's probably based off of the IBC, which is the International Building Code. The California Building Code is essentially based off of that, but with amendments. So there are changes, and then OSHPD, adds their own amendments to the California Building Code. So, if you use that for training, make sure you understand that, the California Building Code and the OSHPD amendments can make certain sections different than what you're actually looking at. So make sure you familiarize yourself with, these reference materials that we've listed for the IOR exam.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Waleed. Javier, I see that you still have your hand raised. I'd like to go ahead and call on you, Javier. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, thank you. Just a quick question. When is the next the filing date for the next set of tests?
You mean for the next session?
Yes. I missed the February 1st deadline and quite frankly,
if you miss the February 1st, I believe the next one will be August 2nd.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you, Javier. Alexander, I see that you have your hand raised. If you're still there, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, Alexander.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting on this webinar. It's been fantastic. I just had a quick question. Does it really take 4 weeks to get our exam results? Can you hear me?
Alexander, you're still there? Are you asking if it really takes 4 weeks to get the exam results?
Yes.
That's typically the waiting period that we have. You may get your exam results sooner, but yes, that's typical time frame.
And it's only by mail. I shouldn't be emailing you guys.
Yeah, you're going to receive a notification, a letter in the mail from the Inspection Services Unit. So you're more than welcome to inquire in an email, but the official notification is going to come by way of a letter.
Okay.
Yep.
And then every single discipline has to be a 75% pass, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see that we have another hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom. Victor, I see you have your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, Victor.
Yes, I would like. 1 second. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes. Go ahead, Victor.
So basically, this reference material that you're referring to, last week, I believe James mentioned that these code books are available online. And if they are available, where we can find those on the PDF format, from online e-codes, is there does OSHPD provides those code books on a format to research on the e-codes as well for the exam?
So last webinar, James did mention that you can access the California Building Standards codes online, and you're going to find those at the Department of General Services website or dgs.ca.gov. And it's been a while since I've gone there, but let me see if I can find it for you. So bear with me. So on the DGS website, in the search bar, if you type in building standards, it'll give you a list of options as to what you're looking to access.
Okay, great.
It'll even give you the history of big California building standards codes and so on. So I encourage you to explore their website.
Okay.
To access those codes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for raising your hand. Glenn, I see that you have your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you'd like to unmute yourself, Glenn.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the DGS website thing. So it is dgs.ca.gov. And then if you go /BSC, the Building Standards Commission page comes up and you'll see the codes tab there. It does have the 13, 16, and 19 codes available on there. Use them daily.
Perfect. Thank you for providing that help. That really appreciate that, Glenn. So if you're listening, if you're looking to get the California Building Standards codes, you can get them off of the DGS website. Please remember that it's going to be the California Building Standards codes. Anything else you're going to have to find at another website, whether it be the AWS or NFPA standards. So Glenn, thank you for that and for providing that, shedding some light. I want to go ahead and look through the list of names one more time. Brian, I see you have your hand raised. Brian, I'm going to go and unmute you if you'd like to unmute yourself, Brian.
Okay, so a quick question I had. I know there are a lot of reference materials listed. Should I expect to be able to answer all the questions just based on the California codes?
We are going to provide to you also the rest of the reference material. Everything will be given to you electronically for the exam. You will have everything there.
Okay, so maybe I'm asking a question you can't answer, but is the format of the content of the test based solely on the content of the California codes? I mean, could you technically answer all the questions with those codes, or do you need the additional references to expand into?
You might need the additional reference, yes.
Yeah, so the answer is no. You would have to rely on the other references as well, the other standards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Victor, this is going to be our last question, so I want to go ahead and thank everyone. Victor, I see your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Victor. Victor, are you there? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you again. This is going to conclude our presentation for today. We want to go ahead and thank you for joining us today and joining us to the end. If you're still here, we still have 61 people logged in, so that's great. So again, this concludes our presentation for today. We want to thank you for your interest in becoming a certified inspector of record with the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. So until next time, be sure to stay healthy and stay safe.